Dystopia. It's a genre that captured my heart. I had been wondering why I was obsessed with this topic for a very long time. The Planet of the Apes films are basically dystopian, and you know how I feel about those movies, especially Kingdom, because I adore them. But I'd also been yearning for something new. Uglies was certainly something. I watched that movie on Netflix, sadly. But I couldn't find something to quench that dystopian thirst. Well, as it turns out, I had pre-ordered Sunriseonthereaping, and suddenly, I figured out where my obsession with dystopia came from. I also might be a masochist because why did I read that? That was a traumatic read. But all roads for this dystopia-based fascination lead back to the Hunger Games. You probably could have been in a coma since 2009 and you would have heard of the Hunger Games. That's because, despite this series being original, its inspirations are from the classics, Myth of the Minotaur and Thesis, as well as the Roman-inspired names that many capital citizens, especially their president, have. Lord of the Flies does something very similar by pinning children against each other, and Lord of the Flies is a classic, but there's something inherently special about this series. It's not just fantastic emotional storytelling with beyond captivating characters, but the world building, reflections of society, choice of hero, and cultural impact cannot be overstated. What did Suzanne Collins do to create not just what will without a doubt be a timeless classic, but design an endearing story that shifted public perception on the young adult genre, while also leaving a lasting cultural impact on society as a whole? Something about being a teenager makes you want to burn the world down. Biologically, we all decide that our parents aren't cool enough and we gotta fit in. But what if you fit in by leading a revolution? Any takers? Well, apparently there was a ton, because following the release of the books and eventually the movies a few short years after, the number of people joining up for archery jumped exponentially. In 2011, Denise Parker, the CEO of USA Archery, said that there was a 105% increase in membership. This is before the first movie ever dropped, which is insane alone. Now, this video isn't going to be about archery numbers. There are much deeper cultural implications from the Hunger Games. But to just have the basically ancient hobby of archery become mainstream again is just a taste at what this series was able to do for us collectively as a culture. I believe the key to truly enrapturing an audience is by giving them a strong emotional story, and it's with this that Dystopia Heals. That alone is such a beyond fascinating concept, because the thought of apocalyptic scenarios should be nightmarish. Remember the fad of the early 2010s? Where zombies were the coolest thing ever? You had movies, games, TV shows, books, and Brad Pitt running around with zombies. They were everywhere. I remember in middle school we were all plotting how we would survive the uprising of the undead. We collectively believed that the zombies would thwart our best troopers, defeat medicine, and swim amongst our ranks like a plague. Well, we had to wait till 2020 for that, but there's a reason that the zombie fad never really stuck around. You know that movie Warm Bodies? It's basically that. My mom and I watched that movie, and we both, when it was over, just turned the TV off and pretended it never happened. That's why the zombie fad lasted for 3 whole years, and the Hunger Games has transcended the last decade. Something tells me that didn't make a whole lot of sense, so let me explain. The Hunger Games series isn't just your typical myopic nod to something deeper without it actually being that. The story is filled to the brim with emotional stakes that give you something to latch onto. And this isn't just in the form of personal connections. Panem as a whole is symbolic of something each of us can relate to. No matter which sect of the districts we come from, most of us hail from them, while we look to the capital for our entertainment and to provide. Every ounce of symbolism within this series matches something that can be felt by people young and old. And that perhaps is the most striking thing about the cultural impact of this series. You can watch the Hunger Games in your preteens and early teenage years like I did when I was growing up. You can then revisit the series in your late teens to early adult years, before winding back up at it before you hit your mid-20s. Look, I know I'm 24, I'm holding on to the last little bit of it, just let me have this. But the thing is, each time I came back to this franchise, it gave me something new, even when there wasn't something new on the screen or in the pages. I revisited the Hunger Games around 4 times before I ever read or saw Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, all of which resulting in newer understandings and connections to the story and its characters. This is the impact of a truly heartfelt emotional story. It's something that brings in readers and viewers of all ages, giving them something each to relate with. For the zombie fan, aside from it getting annoying after 3 years, is why it died. There were a couple cool stories, like the book version of World War Z or maybe the few first seasons of The Walking Dead, but emotionally there was nothing keeping us collectively invested. Warm Bodies was referenced because that's the proof. They tried to make an emotional story with a zombie, and it was a bit goofy. The zombie fan was just a cool what-if scenario to think about, something that placed us into the threat of adversity, and gave us the question, how do you survive? The Hunger Games does that, but instead of action on action without any deeper story, you're given characters. Katniss, Prim, Gale, or Peeta. This is you. How are you going to survive? The desperate sacrifice Katniss makes in the first reaping is how the story grips you, and you never really let go until you're in tears at Rue's death or something else traumatic. The Hunger Games, unlike the zombie fad or any other copycat attempt at dystopia that followed it, gives you yourself. Who would you be? You got lucky. You didn't get picked in the reaping. Would you protect your sister? How about you? You got picked, and no one is going to come save you. Are you going to become a part of these games by killing another kid for the Capitol? These are deep, morally confounding questions that sit with you forever because the truth is, you never know until you're faced with what Dr. Volumia Gall calls human nature. This is why every other teen dystopia attempt fails fantastically. They give hollow attempts at dystopia, threats, or scenarios that don't really make you feel like there's any tension. The stakes in the Hunger Games are not in the odds of our lead protagonists. You can lose a Finnick, or a Mags, or a Lenore Dove, because what are you going to do to stop it? That doesn't happen in most of these other series. And these aren't just characters that have a cool connection to our lead, but deeply impactful individuals. Finnick is probably Katniss's only real friend because Gale can go fuck himself. Not to mention that Finnick's death is a representation of his own trauma in life, one surrounded by faceless hands touching him until darkness. Mags was Haymitch's mentor, same for Finnick and Annie. Or how about knowing that Lenore Dove wouldn't last, and your heart gets ripped away anyways? You're always connected to someone in these stories. You always feel something because you could be in that same place, and weirdly enough, in many ways more than one, you probably are in that same place. You're not in the games, per se, but are you not? This is how this series escapes just the young adult genre, and becomes something more. There are actual stakes, and you can feel it within your very soul when they happen. You know, going into the first movie, that there is only one survivor, and you know that Katniss herself needs to live so she can take care of her family. Will she kill Peeta for the sake of meeting that need? Each story increases these stakes, and so, how does a story that you know will end in tragedy still manage to rip your heart out? For example, light spoilers for the Sunrise on the Reaping. Skip to this point to avoid them. We all know that Haymitch becomes the alcoholic, but like 2 of the 3 other District 12 victors, he's not truly picked in the Reaping. Luella, Maisie, and Wyatt are all characters we expect to die, but through deep interwoven details, they all hold significance to us in the wider story. Luella is Haymitch's sweetheart, the same name he gives to Katniss, his best friend's daughter. Maisie's sister gives the Mockingjay pin to Katniss, but she's also Haymitch's sister at her death. And Wyatt, well, the odds are never in your favor. Each of those people were bound to die, and when each of their times came, it only became more painful. And don't even get me started on that poor girl from District 11, Lulu. This is carried across each of the other entries in the series. Peeta's hijacking, Prim's explosive end, the poor ghost girl Lucy Gray, and the transformation of loving Corio into a man who eats poison to kill off idiots and threats to his power. You know inherently that pain will come, but it's created organically through 3-dimensional characters that aid our main cast. Lucy Gray's care for Jessup seems like an abstract thing to Corio, even an annoyance. He seems, especially from the book's perspective, to be pestered by the fact that she cares for him. With rabies running through his body and turning him into a zombie, we don't get much of an actual characterization. But even through his short time with us, we know that Jessup was a caring boy. He was bitten because he protected Lucy Gray, and thus, his death is all the more tragic, because he was just scared and confused. Lucy Gray's quote at the end of Ballad,
One of the last things she ever says is really crucial to the series.
I think there's a natural goodness born into us all. Really. You can either cross that line into evil or not. And it's our life's work to stay on the right side of that line.
The Hunger Games resonates culturally because it's each of us. It's a reflection of our society both in a deep way and on a personal level. Each of us, no matter our age, sexuality, gender, or identity, can relate to that statement. It holds true across the globe and throughout every culture. It's in essence who Katniss chooses to be in her trilogy, and it's the difference between her and Coriolanus. World building is a true cornerstone of this franchise. Without it, the emotional weight from the characters and stories hold little value, which is, in a weird way, ironic. The Hunger Games series as a whole is a masterclass of writing, because especially with the prequels, everything fits neatly into sequential order and makes perfect sense, as if it were there before it was even written. I think the best example of this is Woody Harrelson grimacing during the parade for the 74th Hunger Games. Like, did Suzanne tell him that in 10 years that would make sense? I don't know. But I do know that the world building is key to the cultural impact of the series. You get a taste of the opulence within the capital in the first Hunger Games, but in Catching Fire, there's so much more to it, to see. I think Sunrise on the Reaping even goes to show the grotesque nature of capital citizens, especially during the parade ceremony. This is juxtaposed with the conditions of the 12 surviving districts, all of which getting more poor the higher in number you go. Not to mention that throughout the series, we do see District 12 get progressively more poor. Each addition to the world of Panem is an intricate detail that gives us a purer reflection of our own society, which is partially why I believe this is so symbolic culturally for us. It's kind of like how Star Wars 4, The Phantom Menace, is making waves right now. The title crawl is all about new trade laws and taxation and tariffs. While that's fun and all, I think the Hunger Games series holds a much more realistic and even more twisted mirror up to society. Not to mention the fact that we always ask for a new Hunger Games, just like the capital citizens wait eagerly for the next games to start. A lot of the fundamental understanding for the longevity and success of the games themselves are found in Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Dr. Volumnia Gaul, Seneca Crane, and even Plutarch Heavensbee are symbolic of the cruelty the capital is willing to impose on the districts to depict their power and give their citizens entertainment with said power. The game maker position is a highly sought-after role for hungry, aspiring lunatics. They prioritize innovation rather than practicality. Several of the previous games were short-lived because they were based in icy tundras or unsurvivable deserts. This, too, is carried out by Heavensbee. Despite him fighting for the right side, his moral ambiguity makes him a frightening character behind the game maker's chair. These people don't care about what they're morally doing, but they care about the viewing experience of those they entertain. The expansion of understanding the games themselves derives from the very inspiration that led to the creation of the series itself. Especially in American culture, The Hunger Games is a reflection of the voyeurism of reality TV. We see this highlighted throughout the 10th Hunger Games. Again, minor spoilers for Sunrise on the Reaping, but it's seen by Haymitch that Lucky Flickerman and Dr. Gaul commentated over the first quarter quell. As seen in the transition between Lucky and Caesar Flickerman, the hosts of the games bring the energy to the viewers. Slowly does the fact that slaughtering children is a terrible thing dissipate from public opinion, and quickly does it become a cherished phenomenon. Money is involved for our entertainment. The tributes aren't even themselves on stage. I think the dichotomy of what the capital is shown and who the tributes truly are is very important. You can see this in each of the interviews across the various Hunger Games we have access to. In the 10th Hunger Games, for example, Lucky Flickerman says, "That's what happens when people do stuff," suggesting that the other tributes are wholly themselves during their interviews, which Lucy Gray is when she performs. But what Lucy Gray represents, sadly, is a shift in what the tributes must become so they can win their games. You see this in Sunrise on the Reaping and especially in the 74th and 75th games. It's also the disjunction between Katniss and Lucy Gray. Both are covey, but one is performer and the other is quiet. When Katniss is propped up for the rebels' propaganda shoots, she can't perform. She thrives on stage with Caesar, like Haymitch did, because of his bubbly but also psychotic personality.
The genius of the interviews and the eventual glamour of the integration of the tributes into the capital society is how it distinguishes them as entertainment. Throughout each of the books and movies, we see that capital citizens, like Effie, truly believe they're doing a service for these children. They get a couple of days to enjoy the luxuries of the capital before they are no longer considered capital. On the interview stage with Caesar, they are capital citizens. They deserve their flamboyant styles, witty personalities, and their chance to shine in the light. But afterwards, they are put back into district attire and sent to the games, where they transform from citizens or people to playthings in a game. This goes hand in hand with the entire world building of the totalitarian dictatorship that is Panem. We know that Corio is the president, but what he does to maintain that power is just another classic inspired by real life. Coriolanus is a Shakespearean story about a Roman general who despises the commoners. Snow represents our uncaring system, one that no matter the side you politically serve, does not serve you back. In deleted scenes for the Mockingjay, you get this haunting interaction between Peeta and Snow. There is the promise of returning to a home that no longer exists. Peeta can't possibly know that District 12 and his entire family return to Ash, but Snow can promise him home, without guaranteeing that it will come. This is the sickness, the plague of the capital, one promise after another, given to absolutely no one other than its sycophant and the sociopathic citizens who adore him. The brilliant interweaving of the prequels with the original trilogy of books is why world building in the Hunger Games is so successful. When I was growing up, I always wondered who came before Haymitch, Katniss, and Peeta. Now the Ballad of Lucy Gray can be seen everywhere, whether it's her singing the old There Before, the Ballad of Lucy Gray Baird, or of course, the Hanging Tree. Everything feels like it's been there since the beginning. I personally can't imagine a Panem or District 12 without Lucy Gray, Maud Ivory, Tam Amber, Lenore Dove, or Clerk Carmine. It's in the spirit of Revolution that their own songs are what becomes Snow's haunting end. The song he heard in the meadow is what rebels marched against when they tore down the dam and paraded another Covey girl into the face of a revolution. Even in this, I think now, more than ever in this video, it's time to acknowledge James Newton Howard for his amazing and even haunting scores. I believe that these songs are just as integral to the world building of the Hunger Games as the actual characters, locations, and scenarios themselves. This world building also extends from the capital to the veins of what Corio calls the beating heart of Panem. There's a lot of subtle ironies, like how the capital citizens are perfectly fine with sending children to die in the games, but there's an uproar at the thought of Katniss being pregnant inside the games. This extends to various other children, because there is quite the metaphor for child labor in the series. 3 examples are Johanna using an axe because she's from the lumber district, Rue understanding orchards by working them in 11, as well as Finnick and his ability to use nets and his trident. District 12 is a good example of not making children work in the mines, but the capital, like us, benefit from the goods produced from child labor. However, even in 12, as pointed at more in the books than in the films, is the commentary on the divide between the seam and the merchants. And yeah, District 11 is also pretty open about its references to slavery, that even as a kid were clear to see for me. Not to mention the purpose of the Peacekeepers or the fact that Reaping Day is on July 4th. The characters of the Hunger Games are riveting. I'm not even going to address who you think I will first, because I'm going to use Plutarch Heavensbee, Effie Trinket, and Caesar Flickerman as my first 3 examples. These are all capital-born citizens. Each are maniacal in their own bizarre ways. These are characters that hold deep intrigue for us, which is why I assume all 3 show up in Sunrise on the Reaping. I chose these characters not because of their recent appearance, but because of how they represent the aforementioned Lucy Gray quote. Heavensbee is still a game maker. He's giddy still as a rebel advisor. He might have his heart in the right place, but he's still a lunatic. Effie, as said before, believed the capital was giving tributes a service by bringing them into their luxury for a short period of time. This changed after she formed an emotional connection to Peeta and Katniss. And Caesar Flickerman is a total maniac. He's not even bothered in the slightest about bringing people on stage to wit their way into earning sponsorships so that they can survive.
I use these three characters initially because they are captivating. They are far from our leads in the franchise, or any book, but they are extremely important character studies. The point is, the Hunger Games resonate, personally with so many, because not only is our heroine captivating beyond belief, but the side characters have such thorough dimensions that they are symbolic of people we might know or see around us. There are morally ambiguous people, like Heavensby, that do the right thing but also are beyond cruel at heart. Others are naively violent, with their acceptance of the status quo without question, like Effie. And what about the enablers, like Lucky or Caesar Flickerman, who push the brutality of culture forward without questioning it? These bring us to characters that lead the path. The main characters of the series are Katniss, Corio, and Haymitch, each of them giving us a unique perspective of their view on life, within their culture. These three are perhaps the best indication of why Suzanne says she writes when she has something to say. Katniss is an endearing heroine, something similar to what I think could be called a reluctant hero. She doesn't want to be the face of a revolution. She never wanted to be in the games. She only wanted to protect her sister. I think she's a very compelling and necessary hero in our own society. In an era where heroines seemed absent from media, she came in at the right place and right time to inspire an entire generation of young women. I believe Katniss can truly speak to anyone with a heart to listen, because she's a character I too adored growing up. The reluctance to be a symbol, but doing so out of an impassioned understanding of who the Capitol and Snow were, is inspiring. What she does for Rue has cultivated people not just across Panem, but our own world. Empathy is the weakness of the Capitol, and she showed it. Each of the District 12 victors are empathetic, which is the one dagger in the whole system that is the Hunger Games, because that goes against what Dr. Gall says the Hunger Games are for. Snow even agrees to this notion in Catching Fire, when he agrees with Katniss's statement about it being a fragile system, if it can only be brought down by a couple of berries. In this same movie, Snow wants her to kill her ally, Finnick, and instead, she shoots an arrow at the arena. This empathy is how you destroy dictatorship. That care for someone else on the other side is how you fracture a system that stands against you, as best shown by Katniss's actions in District 2. She isn't telling the loyalist inside of District 2 to kill her for some sort of heartfelt propo. She genuinely wants him to shoot her, because she doesn't want to be a piece in the game. The same one that Snow has been winning since his little songbird vanished in District 12 nearly 65 years beforehand. And of course, she ends it off with killing Coin, because that's the right decision, not for herself, but for the people she represents, the people she is empathetic for. Katniss Everdeen is so much all at once, but she is always identifiable by the direction of her heart. I think it's something that even in our own society has a great effect. Empathy in the age of reality TV is not a gift, it's a plague. That goes for our own political system as well. The entire system, whether it be entertainment or governmental contributions, is flawed. It's in the actions of the few that the many can have their hearts lifted. Haymitch, again, minor spoilers, skip to here, is a result of how media can spin this, to ruin you and your reputation. So quickly are we to pounce like hyenas on a simple article. He was a caring and loving boy who lost it all, and pushed everyone away because the power the Capitol held over him. He's, in a way, the failed Katniss, the one who was meant to be something more, but could never do it. But his story, his impact, especially on Katniss, is the promise that even though it can start bad, it doesn't need to end that way. Haymitch is seen in the eyes of the Capitol as a ruthless killer, another cog in their machine, a reason to stay away from the districts, because they don't care about you. None of that being true. And lastly, Coriolanus Snow and his songbird, Lucy Gray. Hot take here, this will probably catch me some strays, but I'll take it. Corio is how you do Anakin Skywalker right. We get his entire young adult life in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. While the movie doesn't get you into his head, or at least the 4-hour cut, like the book does, it accomplishes so much in only one entry. Coriolanus sees Lucy Gray as his control thing. This is someone who is raised in the abstract poverty that is equatable to the districts. He is someone with a genuine heart at the beginning, as seen by his want to have Grandmam fed instead of himself. But even from the beginning, he uses Lucy Gray as a plaything so that he can progress further into his academic career and of course earn the plinth prize. It's not until he is caught cheating that all of his hopes and aspirations slip away, and he returns to the manufactured love he found in the games. But even at this point, it is too late for Koryo, because he tasted blood in the arena. I think he fully turns, not outwardly but inwardly, the second he kills that boy inside the Hunger Games. He's a fascinating character study of what happens when you let unbridled dissatisfaction build within an able-bodied maniac. Unlike Haymitch or Katniss, his care and love is real until he understands that in manufacturing it, he can become as precise as an arrow. Sure, he has his initial regrets about Sejanus, and it is clear that Lucy Gray haunts him even into his 80s, but here's what happens when a society allows a boy to convince himself that
it's the things we love most that destroy us.
I used these 6 specific examples of characters in the Hunger Games because they're why this series works. You do not have a cultural impact on our real-life society without their magic. They are scapegoats of the pain we are infused with within our own world. How we handle the obstacles in our way, how we conquer the line of good and evil that Lucy Gray describes, is what truly defines us. We have combined every aspect that has made the Hunger Games a truly impactful series. Now begs the question that brought you here. What is the cultural significance of the Hunger Games? Well, it's not just the USA archery numbers from 2011. It's a global phenomenon. For our own sake, it's the strength in unity. It is not us versus them. It is all of us versus the opulent who prey on our struggles. This has been seen in Thailand as early as 2014. There had been group readings of Orwell's 1984, but the 3-finger salute shown at Rue's death and several other instances in the series is what resonated with the Thai people. This isn't just because it's an easier task than reading Orwell, but because this series resonates deeply with people on a global level. There are deep societal and economic inequalities that plague the masses. This was only in 2014, when only a decade later, those imbalances have heightened to extraordinary levels. The peacekeepers from a young adult series live strongly in nations apart from our own, and within our own. The reality of this series is the lives of those we don't know. In Myanmar, almost 4 years ago, the same 3-finger salutes were seen. Again, much like in Thailand, they were in protest of a military state, one that sought to steal control over their nation, that they rejected. Empathy is the dagger in the game. The usage of these symbols of revolution aren't what inspired these movements. They were just little additions. When a media can help us see our own world in a different lens, it helps us, collectively, raise consciousness. To see that there are inequalities shared between us. A series like The Hunger Games, as it has every time a new prequel releases, sparks conversations, thought-provoking dialogue to properly review our own world, to see if it truly lines up with a dystopian novel made for young adults. The reason The Hunger Games has outlived all of its copycats and draws up vibrant support with each new release is because of its relatability. It's in all of us. From the other side of the globe to your own hometown, we are all in our own game. Just acknowledging the games is a step in the right direction. We, like the Capitol, have become complacent and unresponsive to inhumane actions within our own society. Every story on the news is accompanied by an equally as large tragedy. The days are filled with articles that make us apathetic to our own kind. Apathy drives us apart. Empathy, like in Myanmar and Thailand, brings us together. These 2 words, apathy and empathy, are fundamental when viewing the voyeurism of the media we consume and the governments we live under, both of which only becomes more mind-numbing the further down the path we go. The Hunger Games' cultural impact is presenting us a consciousness that we collectively need, and we collectively draw on every time the Hunger Games comes back again. But the truest message at the end of all of this is that you are in the games. This is you.